Welcome to Getting Intimate with Intimacy. I am Jamie London Wahlberg. My pronouns are he, they.
I'm Katie Jane, she, her.
And I am May. This is a space for deep exploration of the mind, body, and soul connection.
Getting Intimate with Intimacy covers consistent multimedia content spanning all forms of intimacy, from sexual to intellectual, and everything in between.
Our content is created for all beings, bodies, and abilities, age 18 and up.
And it can be enjoyed on YouTube as well as OnlyFans and Insight Timer. The links will be in the description on the live for our live streams.
We're really looking forward to experiencing the infinite layers of intimacy with you.
And remember, intimacy starts within.
Namaste, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Hi.
Welcome back. Here we are. Namaste and welcome back to Getting Intimate with Intimacy, episode 19. We are back with a new topic in our new format. For those who do not know, we are now doing 3 episodes on one topic so that we can dive deep, and we're going to be bringing in some really fun and exciting new additions as we progress in the evolution of getting intimate with intimacy and our intimacy as ourselves. Today's topic is: how has the societal sexualization of the human body affected our lives and intimacy? My name is Jamie, he, they pronouns.
I'm Katie Jane, she, her.
And I'm May.
And we are here ready to get into our topic. So our first question, because we're going to ease into our question because we got to dive a little bit deeper first. May, what are your sexual narratives about the physical body that you've received from society?
Okay, I think I would like to start by what I perceived that was not verbalized. And so that may have gone directly into my unconscious or subconscious mind, which is that the body needs to be covered. I was not within the minority of humans who is brought up in a nudist family. So most of the time, everybody has their bodies covered, and we never went to nudist beaches or anything like that. And the places at school and the clubs that my parents were part of, at least on the feminine side, because I also asked the males at some point, most women were covered as well. They wouldn't show their naked body. Maybe I would say 5% only. I have been exposed in changing rooms and whatever. And so I think that was, to me, the underlying message. And more verbalized and directly that, well, that the genitals are especially something that you shouldn't touch, you shouldn't expose, share, whatever. I understand part of the narrative from the parents' perspective. And at the same time, I feel that when there is no clear explanation to a child why something should be or should not be done, or even asked your opinion about how do you feel, what do you think about something, then you may make the worst assumptions ever in your mind as a child, and keep on living from those beliefs for the rest of your life without you even being aware of them. And so one thing that I slightly remember is that when I went to the beach with my parents when I was very young, my natural instinct was to remove the lower part of the bikini, because when I was very young, I was not wearing an upper part, but the lower part. So I would get to the beach and I was like, this is cool. Just let me get this off and just enjoy myself here. And my parents wouldn't allow that. So I don't know if I was maybe the first day or the second day kindly asked to put it back, but I don't know at which point that I may have been a little bit annoying and may I have no idea, told to do it in a way that was not nice to me, and with any explanation that would feel positive or any kind of understanding for me, like, why can I not be naked here if I just feel like doing it? And so that, plus what you experience at home, that everybody is covered all the time except for when they go to the bathroom, but you don't experience people normally when they go to the bathroom. So the message, the underlying message from my social family environment was, you just have to be covered. And then I will explain further how that can affect intimacy, but that's as far as I'm going right now.
That's profound. I will admit that I'm surprised because I was raised with this awareness of, everywhere in Europe, they're so much more explorative and they're so much more open and the body is embraced and all this stuff. So to hear this is fascinating. What I actually heard that blew my mind thinking about it through what you shared, May, is what was unsaid was actually more important than what was said. Because you, as you just said, you're not able to remember how it was truly addressed. There wasn't something so catastrophic that you remember it, and there also wasn't something so beautiful and supportive that you remember it. And to a child, that unknown, even into adulthood, that unknown allows for a whole swirl of ideas, and the child just picks whatever narrative, is there in their environment of their perception. And I think that's really important because it also makes me think about my own journey, and that a lot of the things that impacted me were what was not said as opposed or done about something, as opposed to what was said or done, even other things that I can think about. KJ, how does this resonate for you? Is there anything that you want to reflect to May, and how are the sexual narratives about the body that you received?
Yeah, this one's emotional for me. And I appreciate your story too, May, but that's so valid, right? The unspoken rules, the unspoken expectations, right? You do absorb that as a child. If nobody tells you one way or the other, but you just see what everybody is doing, right? Or appears to be okay and not okay, right? You go along with that and you don't start questioning it maybe until later. For me, with the heavy indoctrination of religion that I experienced, we were taught it was something dirty, something to be hidden. We were born with a sinful nature. I wasn't allowed to take dance classes, not even ballet or just solo, like jazz, anything just me by myself, because dancing leads to sex. That's not a healthy thing to tell a child, quite honestly. In my opinion now, right? I was a kid. I wasn't even thinking about that stuff.
Like no expression of your natural self.
I just want to express and dance and move to the rhythm that's in my blood, because my dad is a bass player. My mom was also a musician, but you're making me wrong, right? For being who I am and wanting to explore that form of expression, right? So I wasn't allowed to do things like that. An example that comes up a lot when I want to highlight this particular area is when my period started. I wasn't allowed to be in any sex ed classes in school. I was taken out of them, and I think my brothers were too, to the best of my knowledge. We were not allowed to learn any of that stuff at school until I think I maybe ended up in a sex ed class in 7th grade. That's 13 years old in America. And what I do remember is that my period started just around my 13th birthday, and I'm freaking out in the bathroom. My mother walked in all calmly and was like, "Oh, yeah, I thought that might be what's happening." What the F is happening, right? Where I was at, I was like, what is going on? Mayday. At that time, again, I don't remember what she said about it. I don't remember exactly what,
Sorry,
what
KJ, you
body.
didn't know that you were going to have a period at some point or anything of that sort? Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Had zero knowledge, zero support, zero heads up. She gave me pads and tampons, explained how to use them in her bathroom, and then gave me some and said, now put that stuff away. The boys, my 4 brothers, don't need to see it. And my oldest brother, who was a full decade older than me, didn't know what a tampon was for until his fiance told him in his late 20s. So I've had many layers of shame and guilt surrounding sexuality, because that's what I was programmed and taught to believe.
And confusion, I guess.
Lots of confusion. I'm a Scorpio. I was born a Scorpio, a very sexual and sensual being. And so, yes, I had that war with myself from as far as I can remember from when I was 16. When the whole thing with the period happening, very confusing, very much up until that point, and for a while after, I felt like I was the wrong gender. I felt like this was unfair, that I should have been born in a different body. And there was a heavy emphasis through my youth and my adolescence and afterwards on sex being bad or just for marriage, just for procreation, right? So that's extremely harmful, obviously. And the same message as May got of keep it covered, right? You stay covered up. There's very much emphasis on purity and chastity and being meek, right? And dressing accordingly. I wasn't allowed to get a shirt. I remember when I was a teenager wanting a shirt that had sequins on it. No, because that would draw too much attention. And because I became a woman, like overnight, my figure, I all of a sudden had boobs and hips and no support on how to dress in a way that was modest and felt good to me. I hated wearing clothes, not because I wanted to be naked, but because I didn't feel comfortable in my expression. It was not because I had, even within those structures, right? I knew other girls that had more freedom and input on their wardrobe, right? Or at least support from mom or sisters, right? To choose and to try different things. And I never had that. So I just felt like the odd one out. I was teased for the way I dressed. And then I was also teased and poked and prodded physically, my body, by other girls because I was so different. And like my ass was a topic of conversation in my late teens and 20s. And like people of both genders not keeping their hands off of me, very confusing, right? And then to talk about bisexuality or gayness being wrong, that was also taught. But I'm getting this attention from other girls. My, cohort that I was expected to spend all the time with. But then when you act like, I don't know, when I flirted back, I learned quickly that it was okay with some people. Some people could see the silliness and like some people are made really, really uncomfortable. But I'm also a physical affection kind of person. Like if I love you, I want to touch you in a non-sexual way most of the time. I mean, I can keep it in my pants. Right. But it was very, very harmful for me. And I know for many other women in that organization, right? I've known people that have left since. I know people that I can see, some people that I'm still connected with on their social media and whatnot. And so, yeah, the sexual narratives I received from society were of shame, of guilt, of hiding, of not being too much or being afraid of being too much. I still get self-conscious, like if my bra strap shows sometimes. I'm much, much better at it. But sometimes I catch myself like fussing about it. I live in the desert now. It's hot. I want to wear tank tops and shorts, right? When it's getting warmer, which we are on the upswing now. And I have done like so much work, right? And healing work for myself around my body image, around my sexuality. And it's very nuanced. 28 years is not a joke for that amount of programming. So those are the narratives that I was given.
That's a lot, KJ.
Thank you, dear, for sharing.
Yeah,
Yes,
this is a topic that regularly it feels like I'm simultaneously being sucker punched and my heart is being pulled out at the same time, because I literally don't think I've ever heard one positive experience of someone being taught around sexual education and the narratives that they've been taught from society. And I've practically felt like I was sitting in, outside the room listening to that story of you being so scared and not knowing what your period was and that it was coming. And not only for you, but also knowing that so many others go through that experience. And that must have been so traumatizing. And to have an experience that's traumatizing around something that is powerful about your body, that is a natural part of
100% natural.
Yeah, that is something that you are going to be revisiting for a prolonged period of time for the majority of female-bodied individuals. It gives an opportunity for that to come up over and over and over again. And I just want to acknowledge your strength in overcoming this and finding ways to love your body and to navigate that. I did not have a more fun version of that in my own way. I'll come back to it, but effectively my mother literally locked me in the bathroom, and I was forced to use a tampon out the gate, and I'll share that story. And if she ever watches this, I've talked about this story openly, and I've basically told her, like, this is my story. I was like, I love you, and I understand. And here's the thing.
But I have to share this.
Well, part of why I share it is because I think it's important for us to acknowledge that while we have these traumatic experiences, like, they're coming from generations of this being a disaster.
Yeah.
And so we can have our feelings about who we engage with around this, whether it's our teachers who are answering to a larger structure and system, whether it's our parents, whether it's something our friend says because they hear it from their older sibling and they're conned into believing it, kind of thing, or accidentally taught something that's totally not legitimate, right? And the rumor mills of the sharks and all the things that come up happen because it happens over and over and over again. And so while our feelings are valid, there's also, I think it's important to have compassion for those who are older, whether it's a restrictive religious situation and narrative, whether it's coming from just sexual education in society closing doors on things, whether it's homophobia and transphobia and all of these other aspects not being taught. It all sucks. And I had a very, 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 very confusing sexual experience when I was 6 that is complicated on many levels, story for another day. But the point is that from that moment, as a child who is already completely dissociating from my body, I can't even begin to tell you that I don't remember my early perception around body. What I do know is that I had seen my parents naked. I was somehow under the impression this was natural, but when you're out of the house, everything closed down and closed in. When I was in when I was around that same age, probably around 5 or 6, I remember distinctly being in karate after school club situation, and somehow I was determined and snuck into the men's changing area. They had, or boys, frankly, we were children. The boys changing area,
Mhm.
and the girls, they separated through the perceived two sexes, um and I was immediately yanked out of this and scenario. And what I remember was that the boys were naked getting in their gear and the girls were naked getting in their gear, and I couldn't wrap my mind around why I was not allowed in there. And I remember being very fixated and like, this is where I belong, kind of situation. And then so there, and then like public pools, for example, I would feel this sense of deep shame. And it was sort of like my mom would be like rushing me to like get ready, or in camp they're rushing you to get ready. The older I got, the more hiding I did, where I would try to change sort of out of view, or I would do what I refer to as the Girl Scout change, where like in Girl Scouts, you would like somehow majestically pull our underwear out from our shorts and like all of, or, you know, I don't even understand how we did these things or how I learned these things. I don't know who taught me, but someone taught me, right?
I became a pro at putting pants on under my skirt. Yes.
Yeah. So what's interesting is like, again, it's not even like I don't remember who taught me that, but someone obviously taught me that, because the memory that I have is what wasn't said and what I was taught to do and what I did, and just knowing that was the way. Obviously, growing up very dissociated and confused in my body, I was constantly trying to figure out, why do I feel out of place in my body, right? Like, it was not clear to me. And while I have a brother, I don't really, once he got to around that age, I don't remember really seeing him naked or having that sort of exposure. So that was sort of like out of sight, out of mind. Again, I would see sort of like my dad, and so like again, I was always questioning like what, like I didn't understand that what I was questioning was like, why is this not my body and how does this not fit? It wasn't about sexualization at all, or like me thinking about my sexuality. It was just like something doesn't fit. And then also feeling like I was uncomfortable in anything that I was forced into in terms of sexualizing. And at that point, I became more clear, right? Because girl bands and groups and all of that stuff, and like remembering that MTV moment, because I was exposed to MTV, both the privilege and the curse that was, and not understanding that dichotomy at all growing up. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm not comfortable in these feminine things, but like this is what they want. This is what's sexy. Like this is what they like. And I had all these seemingly infinite number of crushes, but I felt like looking back at this, I feel like I was just playing a role. I was a sexual being from a young age who was very confused about sexuality because of the things that happened and were not said and explained for a long time, and things that were not unearthed until way later, and created all sorts of rumor mills. So my sexual narratives for growing up around society were very confusing, and were very much that women are the object. It took me a very long time to understand that men are objectified just as much. It's just not talked about, and it's just not navigated. And it happens especially within the LGBTQAI2S plus spaces. But it also happens out of those spaces, and it creates a lot of discomfort and insecurities among men that's completely silenced. So at this point, I feel like being non-binary and coming into where I feel about society now, I would say that the narratives that I get, I almost feel like I'm not even aware fully of what's happening now because I'm still dealing with what was and trying to make a sense of my new narrative of who I am. And I think that one of the privileges that I don't probably think about very much, frankly, within the trauma is that through my transition and realizing I'm non-binary, I've had an opportunity to reinvent myself through my own love and confidence. And through that, a lot of these things that are currently happening in society just kind of go over my head because I'm just focused on what feels sexy and good for me. So that's what's coming up for me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, there's so much. It's a good thing we're doing deep dives.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say that early in my adolescent years, I started to, this was my interpretation of reality or society, okay? That being a woman was a problem. And it had to do with the body mainly. I started to notice that there was some form of, I couldn't put these words, of course, but like I catch people's attention in a way that it feels really good sometimes, and other times it feels very, very uncomfortable, even dangerous. And I really don't know what to make of this. And yeah, it took me a really long time to really understand, to really accept myself as a woman, and to really come at peace with the shape of my body, what that meant in society, having the period, and because also maybe not as extremely as Katie, but you should hide that from other people. You wouldn't get anywhere and say, I have my period and I'm feeling like this. You would cover where your tampons are or whatever. And so what is not said, like your unconscious understanding, is that one of the most natural reactions, one of the most natural expressions of you, which is your naked body. Plus, if you're a woman and have your period and you also have to hide this from other people, then I'm totally wrong in the most basic constitution of my being. Because one of the most two natural expressions has to be hidden from others. And how can that have any kind of positive impact on a human mind?
It can't. And that's part of why I'm passionate about talking about how men and non-binary people also have periods. And it's making me realize that we definitely one day need to do a series of episodes just about
that. Okay.
Because there's so much there. But I love where you're going. And I feel like it leads us into our next question, which is our main question. And this was of the brilliant mind of May. So let's dive in.
Oh.
May, sorry, go ahead. KJ,
did we miss one?
No, we're doing that one is second because it led into the bigger question. You'll see.
Okay.
We did not skip one. There's a third question. How has the societal sexualization of the human body affected our lives and intimacy? May, how has it affected us?
Okay. So one thing that I was reflecting today is how in my relationships, intimate relationship as an adult, I'm just going to focus right now on what is more obvious or has impacted me the most, which is with sexual intimacy included, because it has a deeper layer than the relationship that I had where there is no sexual interaction. So I noticed when I was thinking back today that many men with whom I've had sexual intimacy have shame and discomfort around their bodies, and they're not aware of it. So what I came to conclude today is not just whether that person think they have a beautiful or non-beautiful body, is the awareness of being naked by themselves and with another human being. And that's why some people, after we had our sexual interaction, immediately put on their clothes. And maybe a couple of times I was like, what are you doing? Like long ago, or turn on. I remember one person in particular that was repeating this, like putting on their clothes and turning on the TV. And for me, it was like, okay, this is not what it feels natural to me after we've engaged. And this was someone who was in love with me, by the way. So, but I never realized that what I was looking for was actually a deep connection, being naked, because to me that was the most natural expression of myself, not just in what I'm sharing internally, but how I am externally, and how I feel that I can create a more beautiful or deeper bond with someone else. Because if there is no nakedness regularly, for me, it's like they are masks. We're constantly wearing masks. And it's not that I have to force anyone to be naked, but it's just that I think it's important that we realize that it's not natural for us to be naked, our human ego is going to avoid it at all costs. And it may not come from a perspective of, oh, I'm not fit, or I'm not this or that. It's just like, this is not natural. Why should I be naked? If all my life I've only been naked when I have having sex or having a shower, what is the need of being naked at all? And I think there is a need to be naked, from my perspective.
That's a great quote.
Love it.
That's powerful. It was interesting because as I was listening to you, I started to also think about, the confusion and dichotomy of within spirituality and religion, this like, no, you cannot be naked. Yes, you need to be naked for this. Like, so it's like, for example, if you're Jewish and you go into a mikveh, like you're naked when you get in that water because you are like going before God and you're getting cleansed. If you go to these, bathhouses, you're naked, or a towel is around, or just a towel is around you. When you get into the type of water, if you're going like, and it goes across cultures. So it's fascinating how we got here. It's like really, really fascinating. And I've always wondered, like, oh man, if I could have been a fly on the wall in those first few moments, because I would love to understand how we got from Greco-Roman bathhouses and that being the thing to where we are now, and like everything in between. But KJ, how has societal sexualization of the human body affected our lives in intimacy, in your perspective?
I think what we're touching on is that it's caused a lot of freaking confusion. A lot. Right? Which obviously starts in childhood and adolescence, right? Depending on the degree of exposure one has had to media, online presences, other beliefs and ways of being, right? Other than how you were raised. And I was extremely sheltered. So, and something I've said before is that I'm not stupid. I've never been stupid, but I was very naive. And so, and then it gets extra confusing. So you go from this super sheltered childhood and somewhat teen years, because I was born in the 80s, before the internet existed. All of us were, but not everybody that's watching this will be. So just to give context, right? That was a whole different time to grow up in. They had the ability to keep us naive, right? I can't imagine being a teenager in this day and age, in general, in the church or not outside the church. It's just changed everything, right? The age of information. And so to me, so I go from this super sheltered, not knowing about my own body, super disconnected, dissociated, like you said, Jamie, super shameful, feeling a lot of shame and guilt and trying to make myself small when that is not who I am as a person. And then going and becoming a teenager in my later teens and early 20s, and then experiencing the hypersexualization of the media in our country, for sure, right? And seeing models that don't look like me at all. And that's the standard, right? That people are holding up. There's posters. This is sexy. This is sexy. This is sexy. But all of my programming says no sexy. You're not supposed to be sexy. And then I see these standards and I'm like, well, I'm just never going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to be attractive for those reasons because my body is never going to be like that, right? To, of course, my own journey of self-awareness and self-actualization, right? Self-love, loving my body, loving everybody's bodies, right? Everybody honoring that we all come in different shapes and sizes, right? And seeing the beauty and all the differences. But I think in general, at large, the societal sexualization of the human body has been super damaging. For that reason, it's causing confusion. It causes the dichotomy of what is right versus wrong, what is natural or not natural, and people saying things like, oh, this is a natural look. You have like 3 layers of makeup on. How is that a natural look? For somebody who was told no makeup, right? And I have sensitive skin anyways. So I was very hesitant to put anything on my face. Again, just at this impasse with what society and the world was extolling and saying virtuous or attractive, right? And then versus what I learned, which never resonated, right? Cognitive dissonance to the max. I think it has caused and encouraged a lot of the cognitive dissonance and divisiveness, right? Also, even because like May said earlier, or she alluded to something that reminded me. I remember, so again, I'm the only girl with 4 brothers. And by the time I was 5 or 6, I had my own room. I don't know exactly, how old I was, because my first memory is when I was a toddler in the crib, sharing a room with my older brother. But that room ended up becoming my own room when I was like 5 or 6. So, but I remember then going to outdoor camp through my school in 6th grade. So I think I was 12. Because again, because of where my birthday falls and these weird rules in the US, I was like a year older than everybody else I went to school with. But I remember going to this outdoor camp and just being mortified to change clothes in front of and around other girls, right? And then I had another whole experience of going to Europe when I was 19, turning 20 there, living and working very closely with females my age from lots of other countries and having some similar and different experiences. Jamie, you said, this is what I heard. I had that experience. Definitely met some people that were not shy whatsoever.
Was it in Norway? Norway, you said?
I was living in Norway, but
They're very more open than the south of Europe, definitely.
They are, and it was a youth exchange program, May. So there was young people from a lot of different countries around the world. And the Germans especially were very body positive, very open, right? That's who I was around a lot. And like we went to the sauna and it was you'd see a group of 6, 7 women in the sauna and the Germans are like immediately naked. And we're all like from America, Germans right? We're like, oh, we don't do that. Not making it right or wrong. It was uncomfortable, right? And I just kind of, averted my eyes or whatever you want to do when you're, in that situation. But I think that overall, in America, since I live in America, right, the societal sexualization of the human body has been really damaging, as evidenced in a lot of the media and the fashion industry, and and then the dichotomy when it comes to religion. Most religions end up teaching some version of hiding or shame, right? Or they focus on it when they tell you not to focus on it. And of course, you're going to be focusing on it like with anything else, right? So it's very confusing and unnatural, as May has pointed out.
Yeah, which is wild when we're talking about a natural being and a natural thing, that things feel unnatural and right. That goes into something that we all talk about a lot on this on this podcast, which is the sense of belonging and the desire to belong. And yeah, I mean, you made an incredibly important point, KJ, about there are people that are watching this who are going to be of different generations. People are older, people who are our age, and people who are younger who don't know what it's like to not have a computer in your hands. And that is a next level thing. And not only that, when you're talking about models, right? Like nowadays, we're starting to have models of different ethnicities, different gender identities, and presentations physically, all different sizes and shapes. And while there's a very long way still to go, the level of shift, when you leave the time of it out of it, the facts of how it was and how it is now are a huge difference.
Yeah.
And absolutely, constantly, I felt undesirable. And again, just like super confused. And it's very challenging to feel sexy and desirable when you yourself feel confused about whether you're sexually desirable. And because there were other layers of these boxes of my identity that also just didn't fit, it was just like always in question. And it was like, just pick whatever moment. And how many insecurities of different things am I questioning whether I'm enough in? And the thing that comes to mind as I'm listening to both of your stories and thinking about my perception and my experiences around this and how it affected our lives and intimacy is confusion, separation, and fear.
Mm-hmm.
And the separation is just so starkly inaccurate and not, and what creates the confusion, right? Because ultimately it was like, well, how are all of these ways that we can separate them to not allow information to spread, right? Like they didn't want you to be in the know, and how this is just not just about sexuality and intimacy. This is everything, right? In society, where there is a sector at minimum, if not a majority in society, that's like, we don't want you to know this, because if you know this, then you have the power.
Or we don't want you to be empowered, period. We don't
Yeah.
know how or not, but this is the thing, not be empowered.
Yeah. And so it just, all of it felt miserable for me all the time. And like I've talked about in previous episodes, when I started to transition, I was, as much as I was gaining clarity in certain ways, and I had gained clarity in certain ways, there was now a new layer of confusion, which is, okay, great. I know that this is what I need to do for me. Okay, now you have a new body. Now society is perceiving you differently. Okay, now you have a new set of rules that I know nothing about. Because even though I have a brother, he was 5 years young. He's almost 5 years younger than me. And my dad was, doing business all the time. And because I was raised into womanhood, I only had my mom's narrative. I didn't have all the other stuff. So the way that I was getting information was by porn, movies, theorizing in my mind, reading fanfic, basically everything that is not ideal. And then, of course, not ideal going to doctors and them not really knowing what to do with me, because they're talking about things in a very scientific way that is true and untrue, right, at that time. And so I would say that it brought me into a period of just infinite isolation, right? Like transitioning, and then also like not all of the rules of who and how I could interact with people of all types of dynamics changed. And I'm still figuring it out. And it's even more confusing to feel even stronger in, you know, in comfort within myself and non-binary. And then it's just really, for me, it's like consent, right? And like that is the, sadly, the new wave, right? Is like, well, all of these other things are not as important as consent. And things like the Me Too movement and like other things like that really brought those things to the forefront. So now, I find myself looking at what's happening for the youth, right? And concerns that I have around, okay, well, we had MTV, which seemed really scary. Cue TikTok and YouTube dance videos and all these things. And it's like
Nothing comparable. I also watched a
nothing.
lot of MTV when I was an adolescent, like music and everything, and yeah, it has nothing to do with today.
Just doesn't remotely compare. And you know, it's like, for example, right now on Netflix, I'm afraid to watch it, but there's also a part of me that wants to watch it, which is like this whole docu-series on a mom who became basically a manager of like 30 some odd kids of different ages for TikTok, and all of the abuse and sexualization and all of the things there. And like just seeing even a clip in the trailer
being influencer one.
That's different.
Oh, okay.
That is about the power of kid influencers. This is literally about a mom whose kid was blowing up. They decided to become a manager, and they're like, oh wait, I can do this with other children, and suddenly corralling literally a large number of children, of which to like day in and day out. And there's a clip of that says like, be sexy, like, you know, and they're like lined up, and it's like a range of probably, I don't know, 7 to teenager. I mean, it's just it's terrifying. And so I think this leads us into what we will slightly get to touch on as we're closing out today, but we'll, you know, in our deep dive.
We can definitely bring this question to the next episode.
Yeah.
And I remembered something else that I wrote down for next episode too.
Oh,
Me
good.
too. Lots of things.
Yeah, but just for us closing out, what are the new narratives you want society to live by when it comes to the human body, and how will these narratives help society as well as the intimacy of humans on a more micro level? Because previously we had all of these rules to force us to be sexy, which created false forms of intimacy, false information, pressured intimacy, or complete separation. And are these really the narratives that we want to take going forward? No. And we're still clearly all healing. So think on that as our week progresses, and we will be back. As always, we are going to be back at a new time. For some of you, you will like this earlier time frame, and either way, it will always be a replay for you to experience. So we will be back for the deep dive on the same topic, our part 2 of 3. It's going to be Tuesday at 11 a.m. PST time, 2 p.m. EST time, and 8 p.m. CET time. So half an hour earlier.
30 minutes earlier.
30 minutes earlier. So we are looking forward to being here with you again and continuing this very important conversation. I'm so grateful to both of you and to everyone who's listening and sharing, because look at how much awareness we're expanding. And I kind of wish, you know, that we had a guy on, like a true, like a cisgender male who was raised within that on this panel. But for those who are watching and feel comfortable to reach out to us via email even, or like on the feed, you know, we would love to hear your perspectives and someday have an expanded round table.
Yes.
This is, it's important for us to all get our perspectives. And it's easy for someone to look at me and say, oh, well, Jamie's got that covered. No, I do not have that covered, because again, my mom locked me in the bathroom with a tampon, and I will probably bring that story to full fruition next time. But with that said, we love you unconditionally.
So much.
Ignore society's painful narratives and figure out your own.
And love your naked body, please.
Yeah, and love your naked body. And remember, intimacy
starts within.
Namaste. We love you. See you next time.
Much love.